We've got everybody starting to join in with us here this morning. We're very excited to spend the day with you today talking about some fantastic ideas for taking our music ensemble rehearsals and performances online, and hopefully giving those of you that are joining us today some new ideas, some new perspectives, and most importantly, some hope. We know there's a lot of frustration and concern over the current situation that we're dealing with. So we're going to have a great time today. We know it's a long day, so we're going to try to make it as interactive and informative and fun as we possibly can. And rather than taking an approach of lecturing for the next several hours, we're going to run this as a discussion, make sure we leave time for questions. And of course, we'd love to hear from you in the chat and the Q&A throughout the sessions today. As we're waiting for several of our participants to come into the room, I want to introduce some of our panelists that we've got here kicking off the day. First of all, our CEO for the Sound House, Mr. Andrew Sermani. He's out in LA, and he is going to be sharing his knowledge with us a little bit later on copyright laws and publishing and some of the pitfalls that you might be encountering there. We also have Bob Phillips, who's past president of the American String Teachers Association and one of the most prolific composers and arrangers in the orchestra world. And he's going to be sharing some fantastic tips with us, not only on string players and the challenges that come with that, but also best practices and working in some of these online conferencing platforms. And then also joining us already, looking bright and excited, Mr. Gordon Goodwin, multi-Grammy-winning composer, great friend out in LA, fantastic educator, as well as band leader and musician himself. And you're going to be also hearing from several other members of our team throughout the day today. So it looks like we've got a good number in, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to open my chat window here, make sure everybody can see. Great. So, feel free as we're moving along today, if you have any questions that come up, you can go ahead and put those right over in the chat window, and we'll try to get them answered as we go. And certainly there'll be time throughout the day where we'll pause and actually address questions. But some of our staff here from the Sound House will be answering some of those questions as we go. You can also use the Q&A window as well if you have questions. But either one, the chat window or the Q&A, will be monitoring both of those throughout the day. Once again, my name is Caleb Chapman. I'm the founder of the Sound House. We started here in Utah back about 22 years ago in 1998. And our program is an after-school program focused on music education through ensemble instruction. And our ensembles are very much contemporary based, so a lot of big bands and pop and rock groups. We've been doing that with great success for several years. Now today we want to talk about the opportunities that exist to take ensemble rehearsals and performances online, because as we all know, so many of us are faced right now with either only being able to meet with a small number of our students, meeting with our students and them not being able to play instruments, or in a lot of places around the country right now, schools are completely shut down. And of course, the biggest challenge right now is how do you develop any kind of consistency in these programs when you don't know if you're going to be open from day to day or week to week. And so what we want to do today is share some of the experience that we've had, and as I mentioned earlier, share some hope. So as I mentioned, we had 300 students here in our programs in Utah that were involved in ensembles right up until COVID hit. And as we were forced to close in March along with the rest of the country, I realized very quickly that we needed to get creative with the way that we were going to run rehearsals and performances if our business and if music education in general was going to survive what we're seeing right now. Now, I did the same thing that probably most of you did at first, which is to quickly get online and research what software was available to be able to have my ensembles rehearse in real time. And the fact of the matter is that really isn't a viable option. Software does exist, but it's limited in the number of musicians that can be playing together at the same time. It's very expensive and requires geographic proximity, which for our program, it really isn't a viable solution. And certainly for most public school programs and universities, it also isn't viable. So the next thing that I wanted to do was to figure out if there was another way to go about rehearsing using existing tools. And I was very lucky to have some great mentors and partners that challenged me to do that. And what I came up with is a program that as a team, we've gone and developed much further and more extensively and have used with great success all the way since back in April. So what we're going to share with you today isn't theoretical. It's not something that we're thinking could be a possibility. We've actually been using it with great success. As a matter of fact, as you're going to hear from Gordon Goodwin, not only were we able to take our 300 Utah musicians and put those ensemble rehearsals online, we actually, once we realized that we could rehearse without any geographic limitations, we were able to start ensembles with musicians literally from all over the planet. Gordon had multiple ensembles, and his students came from Japan, the UK, the Philippines, Australia, the US, really all over. And the product that he was able to come up with is really mind-blowing when you consider that those musicians never were in the same room rehearsing together, have never met in person, but they were able to rehearse and put these performances together from really all over the globe. So we're really excited to share that with you today. As a matter of fact, by the end of the day today, we are going to show you how this model can work for you. And it works with any ensemble, whether you've got an orchestra, a choir, a band, a jazz band, chamber groups, contemporary ensembles. This rehearsal method will work for any of them. And by the end of the day today, we're going to make sure that all of you have a firm grasp on what it takes to put together an online rehearsal and performance program for your ensembles from start to finish, from getting the music out all the way to the end of putting out a finished performance product with video and engineered audio. So it's a lot that we're going to throw at you today. And it's a lot of experience and a lot of work that's gone into putting this model together. So we hope you're ready to have an exciting time today and dive in with us and see how what might on the surface look like a challenge and a frustration, that we actually can change it into an opportunity, not only to address music and keep it going in this time of a pandemic and uncertainty, but well beyond the pandemic. The benefits of running this online component to our music education and ensemble component is, it's incredible. As a matter of fact, it goes well beyond just providing playing opportunities. There's all kinds of new skills and opportunities for engagement that we didn't have when we were running the in-person model before. And before we dive into it, I kind of just want to talk about what some of those benefits are, and you're going to see how those take shape as we go through the discussion today. So just as in the same way that there are elements of the in-person rehearsal model that we can't replicate online, it's never going to be the same to take a group of students on the internet, even if they're playing together, and have it be the same as playing in the same room. It just, there's a difference socially, there's a difference musically, being able to hear the sounds physically around you and the acoustics of the room and that engagement with the communication in person. We're just not going to be able to replicate that online. In the same manner, there's a lot of fantastic benefits to this model that we're going to talk about today that we don't accomplish in person. So before I enumerate these, I want to go just a little bit further into detail of what this new model looks like, because as we've already discussed, it's not as simple as just taking those rehearsals that we were doing in person and putting them online and having synchronous playing of the music by the students. What I did was actually look at the rehearsal model and what is it that happens in a rehearsal. Basically, we have the students perform the music, right? They play the music as a director, as a conductor. We listen, we evaluate, we give them feedback and ask them to make adjustments and play it again. And that feedback loop is what a rehearsal is comprised of. The students perform, we give them feedback, they make corrections, we do it again. So I started thinking, if it's not possible for those students to be able to play synchronously online to rehearse, is there a way we can accomplish the same thing? What I realized was that we have the opportunity to continue to have students collaborate. We have the opportunity as directors to still give feedback for performances, and that can be done with the musicians recording their parts from home, and us listening, putting those parts together, giving feedback, having to make corrections, and keeping that feedback loop going. So basically, we're just taking what we were doing with an in-person rehearsal and spreading it out a little bit more over time. But the effect is still the same in the end. And thankfully, we actually get some additional opportunities for learning and engagement. So let's talk about what those are right now. I'm just going to pull up this slide. All right, so these are a few of the benefits that we get from this revamped online rehearsal and performance model. And we're going to go in depth on all of these throughout the day today so that you have a real good handle on what they look like and how it works. But first of all, one of the first main benefits is that our students have an understanding of recording technology through using a DAW, or digital audio workstation. Now, you might not know what that is right now, but you may have heard of programs like Pro Tools or Ableton, or Logic Pro. Those are all DAWs. We have actually found some fantastic DAWs that are online, that are available for our students to use to record from home and actually compile those recordings together. So we're going to show you how to do that today. But in the process, all of our students actually become recording engineers, and they learn how to use this technology. And it's not as difficult as it sounds. As a matter of fact, I was blown away. We have about 100 junior high age students here at the Sound House, and it took them less than a week to be able to get up and running with the software and the recording knowledge and the hardware required to do that. As a matter of fact, our junior high musicians picked it up much faster than our high school or even college age musicians. So this is very doable by students really at any level. To be able to master this. There's a higher level of individual accountability. We're going to talk about that more as we go through the day. But basically, where, when we're rehearsing in person, it's very easy for a student to get lost in a section. You might have a third trumpet that just, doesn't practice and can just kind of bail out on a part and you'll never know, or a second violin. They just, are not able to get individual feedback just by the nature of how our classes are set up. With this new model, we're actually able to hear the individual, and they realize that, and the level of accountability goes up. There's an opportunity working online to interact with top-tier artists and educators. As schools now, we have the ability to bring in some fantastic guest artists, clinicians, and we have access to those things in a way that we didn't before, and opportunities to take advantage of them. Our performances, now that they are video-based in this model, they are going to have a much longer shelf life to them, right? If we have an in-person performance, we do it and it's done and over. With these videos, they last for years. The musicians are able to share them with friends and family around the country, around the world. It gives administrators something to be excited about and build school pride and things like that. So that's another wonderful benefit of this. It's a great way to give individual feedback. right? So you're going to be able to, as a director, give feedback without it being uncomfortable for a musician, without calling them out in front of a class, a student. You're going to be able to get them direct feedback, and Gordon Goodwin's going to talk about that a little bit later. Also, there's unlimited soloist potential with this format, and we're going to show you how that works. But, you know, right now, if I was to, you know, run an orchestra piece and there would be a feature for the principal violinist, there would be one student working on that solo. Because we're working in an environment where we're actually recording tracks and the musicians are layering their parts as tracks, you actually could have every member of the violin section record their own solo part. Or if you're running a jazz band where you might have only had one soloist that would get some feature time in the in-person model, now you can have as many kids take a shot at recording solos as you want. There's unlimited potential for that. And so now, instead of just having one improviser in your band, you've got 10, you know? So that's another great benefit to this model. The whole idea of individual recording and feedback, where the musicians are listening to themselves and able to evaluate their performance, that's something we've encouraged as educators for years, but had a hard time getting students to do. This model actually makes it a requirement. There's no way for them to put their rehearsal tracks on without recording themselves and listening to themselves. Issues of ensemble size get addressed. If you're in an area where you're limited with the number of musicians, or because of COVID this week, you have half of your trumpet section gone, you can still function because you could have one trumpet player record all the parts. If you don't have quite enough people for your jazz band because you're missing a trombone and a bass or another saxophonist, you can simply have players double those parts and record an extra track, and voila, now you have a full ensemble. And the opposite is true. If you have too many players on a part, you can simply mute those parts out as you get ready to do a mix down of your performance. So whether your ensembles are too big or too small, those size issues are very easily addressed in this format. You have the ability to isolate instruments in your rehearsal. And again, Gordon's going to show you a little bit how that works here in a bit, but you're able to, as the director and as you're working with your students, you have the ability to just pull out any number of specific instruments or a section or multiple sections at a time. Becomes a very powerful teaching tool. Also, for the first time, our students are going to be very easily able to compose music at home and have access to a wide range of instruments, the ability to multi-track. They're going to be much more comfortable with that. So the idea of students creating music as part of your curriculum becomes a lot more doable and a lot more exciting and accessible because of this model. And finally, there's an opportunity to collaborate with musicians from around the world. It's very exciting as you get into this online recording and rehearsal model to be able to look at collaborating, find a sister school in another country and work on a piece together, or do a joint concert together. The opportunities really are endless when it comes to that. So those are just a few of the benefits that come with adopting this model. And those benefits don't go away when we get back to an in-person model. So, our team here at Soundhouse EdTech really firmly believes that the best music education model rolling forward is going to involve a hybrid of both the in-person model and this online component, and realize that these benefits, all the benefits we're talking about, they're not tied to a synchronous rehearsal model. So if and when down the road we are able to synchronously rehearse online, this idea of recording and being able to, all these benefits that we just talked about, those come with this different model, which is a rehearsal and performance model involving recording for those students. So that's kind of a quick overview of the many benefits and the exciting things that this model brings. And for the rest of the day today, we're going to take you through each of the pieces from start to finish so that you can do this on your own. So before we jump in with our presenters today, I would love it if everybody, all of you that are joining us, the participants, could you just take a moment? I want you to just, over in the chat, if you could just put one word that summarizes how you're feeling about the current situation that you're in, whether that's excitement, frustration, fear, whatever it is. You know, that will help us today to be able to know where you're at and where you're thinking. Wonderful, peaceful. I love that from Joseph. Great. Overwhelmed, challenged. Yep, we're hearing a lot of that. Excited. So great to see that. We're hoping a lot of you will do that. Let's see. Sleepless. Geez, that I can totally understand. Donna says newbie and stressed. This, you know, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be an educator jumping into the stream right now with all the challenges that we're facing. So disconnected, intrigued, wonderful, stressed, yeah, frustrated. Well, we appreciate you sharing that with us. And hopefully at the end of the day, many of you will have some different words to share there. So we would love for it, you know, for all of you to feel some hope after we're done with this today. So right now we want to jump in, and again, our idea today is to take you really from start to finish. So to kick us off today, Bob Phillips is going to share a little bit with us about, first off, selecting an online web conferencing platform. Now, Bob, a lot of the schools have web platforms that are mandated, but some of them do not. Are there benefits, pros and cons to the different web platforms, and can you share some of that with us? And you're muted, Bob.
Okay, there we go. So first of all, let me just say that I was in the classroom 27 years. I'm not currently in the classroom, but I'm in contact with teachers all over the United States on a daily basis talking about these things, as well as all three of my daughters and son-in-laws are teachers, and we live next door to them, most of them, so we're literally dealing with this on a daily basis. And I understand that, you know, everybody's got a different situation. The only thing that we have in common right now in the United States is that literally every school district in America is doing it differently. And more importantly than that, it's changing day by day or week by week. One of my son-in-laws is an administrator, and he just gets up every day and goes in and goes, well, what's the new mandate and how do they change it? So anyway, conferencing platforms. There's a bunch of different ones you can use. As Caleb suggested, there are many of you already have an existing learning management system that your district mandates and you have to go through. Fair enough, you'll just have to work within whatever that conferencing system is. If that is not the case and it's your choice, there are a number of them out there: Zoom, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Canvas, Flipgrid, Skype, Peer Deck, and some others. But these are some of the big ones. Now, I do have this all on a PowerPoint. I will have that to the Soundhouse folks yet this afternoon. And when this conference is over, that'll be part of the resources you can grab and see it. I have, you know, some of the web URLs in here for these sites, as well as some of the cost structure. So with that in mind, let me just talk about them. Of course, the most, you know, ubiquitous one right now is Zoom. Lots of you know, lots of jokes about Zoom and Zooming and you know, Zoomies. I'm sure your kids are calling each other Zoomies if they're using Zoom. But the idea is that Zoom is very robust, and it's changing. They're adapting quickly to what the situations are in the schools. So they have a higher education data sheet, K-12 data sheet, and they're meeting all the FERPA, all the federal guidelines on privacy and all that kind of thing. That's a big thing with these web platforms is, what's the privacy like? That's a huge issue for your administrators. So you have to look at each one and see what they are. And I would strongly recommend, before anybody do any conferencing with students, that you check with your both your curriculum department, as well as principals, as well as, you know, maybe even HR, to find out exactly what the rules are for student conferencing in terms of privacy issues.
Hey, Bob,
yes.
real quick, While you're introducing this topic, I would love it if our participants here could mention over in the chat if you you know, what platform you are using and if it's required or if you have the option. So if you could just add that over in the chat while Bob is chatting.
Yeah, I see someone's using Schoology. You know, there's web apps, all the different ones. Teams, right? That's Microsoft Teams. So there's all these different ones. Google Meet, yep, that's the old Google Hangout that now they refocused. So anyway, I think that's a big, you know, what some of the big issues there. Obviously, you want to, in each one of these, whichever you decide to use, you want to just check out the audio and the video quality, and can you change that? So, like for example, in Zoom, you have the ability to record at a higher level. That becomes a critical issue for music teachers because one of the huge things about this conferencing thing is the kids aren't recording on high quality microphones, obviously. Even if they have a microphone, it might just be the computer or the laptop mic. But the point is, you can change the audio quality, and the video is a little less important. Although I'd have to say, for string players, it's pretty important because we really need to be able to see body movement and bowing motions. Okay, security obviously is a big one. So, for example, Zoom. It's everywhere from free up to $199 a year, depending on if you want to host up to 500 participants or as few as under 100. So there's all kinds of price structures. GoToMeeting, they've got you know, a whole admin center that's really powerful. Diagnostic reports, features that you'll love in GoToMeeting is, you know, up to 250 participants. And the ability to do personal meeting rooms, so you could divide the kids up into smaller subsections and they can meet with each other, which is very powerful. And single sign-on. A huge issue, I think, for everybody, if you have a choice of these web conferencing platforms, is how do the kids sign on and how complicated is it? And how much work do you have to do to get them in? So that's another thing you want to check out when you look at some of these resources. Okay, let's see. Skype obviously is still viable in some places. If you don't have the ability to use some of these others, you can get up to 50 people. Maybe you have a real small classroom or whatever, and you can make that work. So it's still out there and it still works. And they're improving those you know, services by the week, as I say. Google Meet, which of course is the old Google Hangout, redone for education, if you will. So if you're going in through Google, that's a really good one. It has, you know, some cool stuff with calendars, because you can obviously integrate with your calendars, with all the other Google tools in your Google Drive, all that kind of thing. So that's powerful. So there's a lot of integration there. So that brings up another topic, which is just that, you know, if you're using the G Suite for Education or whatever it might be, or the Chromebooks, you know, pathway, just make sure you know how this integrates with other software you want to use. So that's another issue you might want to look at when choosing one of these. Microsoft Teams, of course, they're a little bit more business oriented, but they've done a good job of trying to adapt to the school environment. Let's see, when we go through these others, they do have a lot of these, by the way, a lot of these platforms like Google Teams have tech help you can get online from the vendor, which is really super helpful, because I know that the biggest frustration I'm hearing from teachers about their conferencing software around the United States is all of a sudden they're trying to do something and they have students that can't get in, it won't work, it won't whatever. And boy, that nothing stops a classroom faster than, that's just like an in-person classroom disruption where, you know, for me, it was as a string teacher, is when the cello kid, you know, says, here, my string's out of tune, and you go to tune it, and all four strings at once go, blah, 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 blah. They unravel. Now they're 20 minutes later, you're teaching again. So, so that's an important one. Canvas, of course, has some really great learning management system tools, a lot of integration with Canvas. There are some, yes.
When you talk about the tech support, is that something that educators are going to have to budget for, or are they, is that tech support often free and available?
It's often free and available. And particularly if you're part of a learning management system, the district has bought in, and so they're getting a certain amount of tech support. It may be in school. It may be that you have an in-person in-school person that's doing that for you, that's integrating with the interfacing with the company, but also most of the companies do have that. So Canvas is a really powerful one. There's a whole Canvas community for resources and that kind of thing. And then Flipgrid, just want to mention that, Flipgrid's one that people are using for videos. It's not quite the same as the others in terms of live in person, but it's also another resource. So check out Flipgrid if you want to do project-based kind of things. Peer Deck is also a cool one, and it's more related to slides and that kind of thing for creating content. It's not so interactive, but as the others, but it's also powerful. So anyway, that's just an overview on some of the issues to think about when looking at conferences. Someone says, "Who is Bob?" Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's a question I ask myself often.
What about Bob is the appropriate question, right?
Yeah. What about Bob?
Yes.
For the person that asked, I was, as it says, past president of American String Teachers. Also, I was in the classroom in Saline, Michigan for almost 30 years, and then also 15 years as director of string publications at Alfred Publishing in LA. So.
And as I mentioned earlier, certainly Bob, one of the most prolific composers and arrangers in the orchestra world, and we're so grateful for your time today, and thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise. Yeah. Wonderful. All right, well, we're going to move on, starting to get into the tech side of this now, which is probably where we start to get really intimidated. I think many of you obviously have been working in the conferencing software, but this next section is maybe where we start to get into some uncharted territory. So to help us out, we're bringing in one of our producers here from the Sound House, one of our expert team members, Mr. Nick Petty, graduate of Berkeley and fantastic asset to our team here in Utah. Nick, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So what we want to talk about right now is, the foundation of how we run this online model, which is, of course, the DAW, the Digital Audio Workstation. And some of these teachers might have heard about some popular DAWs, but of course, for this model, we need something that is able to be utilized online and works on a lot of different platforms. Can you kind of introduce us to some of these?
Yeah, so let me get it. Can I share my screen?
You certainly can, yeah.
Okay. So at Soundhouse, we've been working with a really popular DAW called BandLab. Super cool. As a producer, I can pull up all my bands right here, which is a bunch of them, see different progress that, different people have made on different bands. And I can choose any of these. This is my band that I'm working with. And it's really cool because there's collaborative features. You can put lyrics here, you can put notes, you can put any comments you have. And then it's as simple as opening up the mix editor and you can start to record. And this is great because you don't need anything. You just need a browser. So it's accessible to anybody with a computer or a device. So this is one example. I think this is the main one we're using at Soundhouse, but we do have some other ones. There is Soundtrap, which is similar. Let's see if I can get back. It's similar, just a few different features, less track limitations, few different instruments, super easy to start up.
Welcome.
They have this instructional video, which is nice. And yeah, you can just add tracks, make comments, kind of same situation. And then we have BandLab for Education, which is a little bit better for educational institutions because you don't have any of the outside privacy issues you might have with the social version. So there's going to be no collaboration with people outside of your school organization, which is good, especially for younger students, so that we can kind of keep the privacy secure. So those are a few of the online DAWs, which are super easy to, they're free, they're super easy to use, and they're accessible to anybody, no matter the tech they have.
So are there, you know, in your opinion, Nick, any pros and cons to using Soundtrap as compared to BandLab? I mean, one thing that I love, of course, about the BandLab is the EDU and the FERPA compliance. What are some of the other differences? You know, if I was a director and I didn't have to worry about the FERPA and both programs were approved in my district, is there one or the other that you feel is stronger? Are there pros and cons?
That's a great question. They're both very similar. I think Soundtrap is going to be perhaps a little bit better if you have students who are more familiar with tech, because you have more options, you have more instruments, it's a little bit more complicated. I like starting with BandLab because it's so simple. You can see there's not a lot of buttons. And most of these you can figure out exactly what they do just by, you know, clicking and dragging and experimenting. So maybe BandLab's a little bit simpler. Soundtrap is a little bit more advanced and a little bit more complex. They both have EDU platforms. I think Soundtraps might require a membership, and I think Soundtrap also has an EDU app for the iOS, where BandLab does not yet have one. But I've worked mostly with BandLab, so I'm pretty happy with BandLab.
Great. And, you know, for those directors that might have some experience with a DAW like Ableton or Pro Tools, you know, can you explain to them, to these directors, why they wouldn't want to work in, you know, why that's not a viable model for this online format as compared to the online ones?
Well, so far we've been encouraging students to start at the online platform because it's so easy, it's so accessible, and it's free. But we do also encourage students to expand out and go into different DAWs, not only because of this, you know, how valuable the skill is in the industry and being familiar with the programs are, but it helps create better recordings actually. So I'm going to show you one that I'm pulling up. I'll kind of give you an overview of the three that I think are the most important and are the most accessible at this point. So this one you guys have probably heard of, GarageBand. It's very, very simple. So this is the perfect next step. If you have students who are getting really good at the BandLab and they want to take their recording to the next level, GarageBand comes free on most Macs. And it's also like very cheap or free on iOS. It's like $5. And automatically you have like better instrument sounds, more recording capabilities, and you are able to work through some of the latency problems that can come with recording to a browser. So GarageBand is great. It's really easy to use. And then you can also take a look at, sorry, my cat's all over the place. You can take a look at the big brother to GarageBand, which is Logic. And I'll let it open, but while it opens, I'll explain that Logic is just GarageBand's big brother. So it's perfect stepping stone to go BandLab or Soundtrap to GarageBand, which is very simple, very easy to use native program, to Logic, which Logic is now you're playing with the same tools that the pros are playing with, okay? Professional film score, virtual instruments, professional tracking. So this is kind of the end of the road for your students. And it's probably the cheapest DAW. Logic is exclusive for Mac, but it's only $200. And you have everything you could ever need, the most up-to-date software like technology. And I'll just show you what that looks like and you'll get a good idea. It looks pretty similar to the way GarageBand look, but you see we have way more tools. We have all these loops. We have an advanced mixing feature, and you can add, you know, I don't know if there's a track limit, but you could add like 200 tracks and you can facilitate all of that. Yeah. So
Bob,
really advanced stuff.
Bob, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, for teachers sitting out there who maybe have never done this before, I'd like to point something out. Can you just bring back up? Well, I guess you could show a track. The BandLab was already got waveforms in it, but just if you've never done this before, all this is just an online recording device where when he's talking about tracks, it's just that each line where you see right there where you see the audio one, and the kid records in there. That's Johnny the tuba player records in there. That's the tuba part. Then the next kid student records in, and that's Susie the oboe player, and that's her track. The key to this thing is it just allows ensembles where there's lots of kids. You can have enough tracks that the entire ensemble can put their part in individually, just keep stacking them up on top of each other. And so that's just in case you didn't understand that to begin with. And what you're looking at is waveforms. Those are just what the audio looks like when it's rendered to waveforms.
Yeah,
Nick,
and
I think it would be helpful to go back to since we're really talking about is BandLab or Soundtrap for them to get started in, just showing them again what that looks like with the waveforms and what each of those tracks represents.
yeah, sure. So you can see right here we start with the reference track, which is usually the original recording. As far as contemporary music, it might be a score recording for classical music, and then in this particular track, we've broken the drum set down into 4 different elements. And then you can see Sarvin, he's the other guitarist working in this band. Bass would be by our friend Mike. So you have each of your students essentially recording on one song, or sorry, on one track. And then these are called faders. They give us the ability to kind of mix things in. So, and you can solo it, so that's all you hear. I'm not sure if you guys can actually hear it, but.
Yes, we can.
So this is useful because if you want to check Susie's part or Mike's part, you can listen in exactly what it is. You can hear how close they got to the metronome.
Yeah.
And then
we'll go into detail on all that here in just a little bit, Nick. But that's great. That's really helpful, I think, to kind of get everybody started on the program. Now, we are getting a little bit behind here, but could you just briefly talk about, and again, those of you that are participating here with us today, that we are going to go into depth here about how those tracks get recorded and what that looks like and how to run a rehearsal and all that. So don't think that we are, that's all we're going to talk about on the DAWs. We're going to go into depth on that. But once you selected a program to work in, whether it's BandLab or Soundtrap, again, the reason those are important programs and separate from some of the other DAWs you might have heard of is that both of them are free, and both of them can be accessed on really pretty much any device, whether you're on a Chromebook, a laptop, a desktop, and in a lot of cases, even on a smartphone, you have access to those things. But that brings up, Nick, I'd just love if you could chime in quickly here before we turn the time over to Mary Jo for a minute. If you could talk about what equipment is required by the students and the directors to be able to capture these recordings. So again, what we're talking about is using software to capture recordings by the students that we can put together in a rehearsal model and a performance model. So what gear is required? What would the student need to have besides a device to be able to record themselves?
That's a great question. So obviously start with the device, and you actually have some built-in mics on a lot of the devices. So the only other thing you need to get started would be a set of headphones. So like I'm using AirPods, which would not work very well because there's Bluetooth, which means there's latency. So if you got just a regular set of headphones, which most people have just, or most students will have that come with their devices, that's all you need to get started. So you are automatically able to get started with pretty much whatever you have. And then you are able to get some equipment that's going to help enhance the experience and enhance the quality. And I can show you some stuff. My first recommendation, once you have a set of headphones, is what's called a USB microphone. You can see tons of options on Amazon that really will match any budget. We see anything from like $15 up to $100. And really any of these are going to be great options. And the Sound House, we have a document of recommended mics in case all this is overwhelming, but this is the best way to get started, because you can record pretty much any instrument with these mics and with a built-in mic on a computer.
And so, you know, what's the, so these directors joining us today know, what would the sound difference on a scale of 1 to 10, what would the quality difference be between a student recording on, say, you know, their mic on their iPhone or on their desktop compared to a USB microphone that they would plug in? You know, just generally, what kind of quality would they expect, you know, could they expect?
So on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're using like built-in earbud microphones, that's probably going to be around a 2 or a 3. If you're using the built-in mic on your iPhone, like literally singing into the built-in mic, that's going to be around a 5 or a 6. And then once you start buying an external microphone, like a USB mic or even a higher quality condenser mic, you're starting to get into the 7 to 10 range, you know, spending anywhere from $100 to $1,000 just to get that extra bit of quality.
Right. But really, you know, as you said, as long as the students have a pair of wired headphones and a device, they're good to go, right? They could get recorded.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hey, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise and knowledge on that. And
no problem.
yeah, wonderful. And Nick, if you could stick around for just a couple more minutes, after Mary Jo gives us some information, we're going to take a short 5 minutes to actually answer some questions live, and then we'll take our first little break here. So, so if you could hang out for just a couple minutes. Mary Jo, we're getting into discussing this brave new world of online recording and creating music and student collaboration and so many cool and exciting things. And of course, while this is exciting, you know, there's got to be some kind of cost associated with it. Now, the great news, as Nick said, is a lot of the software is free. A lot of the hardware requirements the students are already going to have. They don't need to spend money, but some of this is going to have to, you know, there's got to be some funding for some of this. Where, you know, well, first of all, I want to introduce you to our participants today. Our next guest, my longtime friend, Mary Jo Papich. She is the co-founder of the Jazz Education Network. Been an amazing educator for many decades. It's hard to believe she looks so incredibly young.
Yeah.
But she is really one of the finest educators and administrators. And we'd like you to put on your administrator hat today, Mary Jo, and share with these educators where can they access some funds to be able to implement programs like this?
Well, I'm learning today too, and I have to tell you, anywhere you can, teachers, is where you need to access funds. And in my experiences, of course, you've got your regular funding, which varies for all of you, from 0 to many thousands. So you've got your regular budgets. I would list this a priority, truly, for the future of your program. But also look under your new music budget. This might be the time to use music in the file and spend the money that you would put towards new music. New instruments, I personally would, if I didn't have to have it, I would live without it and put my money now towards purchasing whatever I needed to keep my program afloat. And not just with the kids, but for the parents and for the public, because perception is everything. Instrument repair budgets. But it makes most sense in what we're talking about today to use a technology budget. And if you weren't given a technology budget, now's the time, past time, just get to the principal, get to your IT director, and literally beg for funding to be able to purchase equipment so you can do this. And also is professional development. You have been Zooming now for weeks, and here you are on Saturday Zooming again, and you're doing it to improve your teaching and to give better service to the students, to bring music into their lives so they can keep playing their instruments. I know in Central Illinois, where I am, there's a lot of teachers that they aren't playing the instruments yet. because of situations and not having instruments at home, or everybody's still at home, and they're not playing, so those kids aren't getting to improve. And I'm not saying we can't teach real music without playing, but it's you want to keep your kids playing as much as you can. But professional development, really, you're not going to be going to any conferences. Jen just put ours online. Midwest Clinic is even not even going to, it's not going to be new. It's going to be vintage recordings, and it will be fabulous. But the point I'm trying to make is, any money that you might have spent going to those conferences, this is the time to put it towards purchasing the equipment you need, possibly, if you're like I am, I would want the sound house to do it all. And I would, Caleb will talk about that possibility too later, but do whatever you can. And I just want to say too that I just got done, I serve on the review panel for the Grammy Music Educator of the Year. And I just got through watching hours and hours and hours of the second round, and now the final round before it goes to the Blue Ribbon committee to choose. And, in the beginning, one of the panelists said, I even called and said, you shouldn't do this year. This is not the year to do it. And to give an Outstanding Educator Award, and I thought that was odd, because what we saw in the applications were people just like you, that are looking for answers, and they want to bring their kids, they want to have their kids performing or singing and playing everything. And they are using, when I read all their platforms, and there are many, but many of them are using just what Nick talked about. And starting with Soundtrap and BandLab and OnDeGrad, they're using just what you're learning about today. So it's good that you're here, and I just want to send you a lot of good, lots of love today, because you need it. You are in tough times right now. We're not only in a COVID pandemic, we're in climate change, flooding, fires, we're in a divisive presidential campaign, we're in a Black Lives Matter. There's so much out there that you are working with and against, actually, and trying to build these beautiful children into productive citizens through music. And I just want to say, hey, we're with you. The whole team is with you. This is a great team of people, and reach out for help and keep at it. Keep doing what you're doing. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. And along those lines, with everything you said, wouldn't you? Well, actually, I don't need to ask you. We all agree on this call that music education and the stability that these programs give these kids is more needed now than really just about anything else we can possibly be doing.
I totally agree. Obviously, Caleb, we're all in that together, and the kids need that stability of, and they also need the stability of routine a little bit, because I know some of the teachers are struggling, and there's no pattern. There's no, this is this day, this is rhythm day, this is and it's, the kids don't know what to expect when they walk in. So be a teacher that does give them a solid routine. But music is so vitally important in today's world, to heal the soul and to use the arts for these life skills they're using that can transfer as adults as they go into the world, and to help us all to work together.
And Mary Jo, you bring up a great, remind me of a great point that I wanted to share. And then right now, as I'm making this final comment with this segment here before we take a short break, if you do have any questions with our current team that we've got here on what we've just discussed this hour, if you want to put those questions over in the chat right now, we'd love to address those in the next just couple minutes. But the point, Mary Jo, that you remind me of, I had a great friend who's an educator here locally in Salt Lake City call me at the beginning of the year in August. And she said, I don't know what's going to happen, Every day it changes, every minute it changes. At first they were saying we weren't going to be in person. Now we are going to be in person, but they're saying it might only be 2 days a week. And then if I lose kids, she said, how do I put any consistency to this? And I told her the same thing that I'm going to tell all of you right now, which is, the only way you can be consistent this year is if you are working primarily, like if you build your program on the online model. You have to work in the online model and treat anytime you see these kids face to face as bonus and as a way to enhance what you're doing online. Because just because you're meeting this week doesn't mean you're going to meet next week. There's just not going to be consistency this year. And I believe that's the case. It's going to be the case for several months. Even with the vaccine, we've been told, it's going to be up and down through the end of this school year, at least. And so really the best way, it's like if you're going on a trip and you don't know what the weather's going to be, just dress for rain. And then if it's not raining and you can take off the raincoat, great. But you want to have that raincoat with you the whole time. Right? So,
yes, that's
okay.
Good.
Yes. And we've had a lot of comments here. Thank you, Mary Jo, from Judith. Yeah, we appreciate all that. Anyways, do we have any questions for this team right now before we take a short break? I'm not seeing any on the chat. Andrew, is there anything we need to address in the Q&A?
They have been answered, so everybody, we're all up to speed with that.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we are just a few minutes behind. We're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. So go get a drink, go grab a sandwich. We do have one question here. Are students using Chromebooks successfully while using some of these DAWs? Many of my students will not have access to additional USB mics, etc. Nick, what I've seen with the Chromebooks is it does work. It's a little bit slower and maybe has a little bit more latency issues than laptops, but I think very doable. Is that your understanding and your experience with the students you've worked with so far?
Yeah, so we've had tons of people use Chromebooks and we've had amazing recordings. So it's possible. We encourage sometimes an iPhone, if students have an iPhone and a Chromebook, we actually encourage them to record on the iPhone and iPads because the mics on those are so high quality. So with the Chromebook, it's going to work. And we've had students use it work. And usually they have a better option and don't realize it. Cell phones actually end up being a great option.
Yeah. We have another question. Can BandLab be used to record with iPads and iPhones? Definitely. I mean, that's what's so beautiful about it, along with Soundtrap as well. Again, these programs very flexible, and they've been, really manipulated in fantastic ways, even since COVID hit in March. I know BandLab was about 12 million users in March, and now it's well over 25 million is I think somewhere around there. So more than doubled, and that means more resources for those companies, and they realize that education applications are important. So anyways, all right, listen, we first of all want to thank all of our panelists for joining us for this hour. Next hour, we're going to be talking about getting into starting to set up the actual rehearsal files in the DAW. How do you set up your reference track? How do you start this whole process? So we're going to go in depth next hour. Lots more time to answer questions. You can continue to put those in the Q&A and over in the chat, and we'll get them addressed. It's just about, we're almost to the top of the hour right now. Let's come, we're going to plan on starting at 5 minutes past the hour. So we're going to take about a 7-minute break right now, and we will see you back with our next round of information at 7 minutes past the hour. Mary Jo, Bob, Nick, thanks to all of you for joining us, and Gordon, looking forward to hearing from you in this next hour, and Andrew. So we will be back shortly. Thank you, everybody.